Let's see which one to pick. Eeny, meeny, mighty, mo, catch a pony by the hoof. Let's see, I think we shall go with Applejack. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Digital Paw Workshop. It is I, that bad apple that ruins the bunch, Techno Meow Tinkerer. And today we're going to make a diorama apple farm for old Applejack from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. So let's get on into the video. Now what I got here are these little pegboards you pick up from the Dollar Tree. And right now I'm pointing out the fact that I'm making sure I got some of these, the grooves and the pegs lined up a certain way. Now you do want the flat surface when you're gluing these two together. But also I do want to remember to keep them a certain way in case I decide to make more. I can then kind of semi-connect, attach them together to create a bigger one or have them all separate. At least that's the plan for future ones if I get around to it. But also one thing I was trying out the pegboard is because instead of sitting there having to worry about cutting wood, trying to find the wood, you want to find a light enough wood that's strong enough to support. And this is actually both light and it's got some strength to it. Now here I'm cutting out some paper that I'm going to put on the pegboard. This is the paper I'm going to use to paint on. I'm using a slightly thicker cardstock. And that's one of the reasons I was worried about if I use standard printer paper that things may bleed through, may crumple up, and a little bit thicker, maybe not. It still ended up after I painted kind of crumpled around the edges a little bit. I gotta go back and catch up those little details, but for the most part, it worked. A little brayer to sit there and try to get everything all smoothed out. Now here I don't know what these plastic pieces are. I picked them up at the bin store for like a bag of them for $1. I tried to find out. I thought there was some sort of track to use like these. You see people make 3D printers and other stuff for, but they're not. At least I couldn't find enough, and Google was not helpful in their image search. So if you know what these are, please tell me in the comment and what they're used for. Right now I'm using them as the post for the floor, the main floor of the barn to hold the second floor or the loft up. I think it's called the loft. Now here I'm actually working on the door post. Go ahead and glue the popsicle sticks on it. Oh, by the way, I was probably about 80% done with this thing when I found out you can cut popsicle sticks with scissors. I spent most of this time cutting them with a hacksaw. Now, to be fair, I still use the hacksaw even after I know this when I wanted to cut a whole slew of these round ends off. For instance, that's one reason why all of them look like actual boards, is I cut the round ends off. And so I did learn how to place it in my little jig, use the hacksaw, put a board on top, and make sure you get enough of them in there to be nice and tight, but not tight enough where they pop out. And here's my crew. They've been working hard in my absence trying to get this thing together. As you can see, some more popsicle sticks up. And as we get on into me showing some more stuff, I used the model glue for anytime I was gluing stuff to the plastic. And I used wood glue in the areas where I was gluing wood to wood. And I did the basic, I guess it's I don't know if it's the header or footer or what these are called before I put the slats up. Now normally I would put one up and let it dry before I put all of them up, because I want to make sure that one is square before I add it. But for filming purposes, that one I kind of just want to do it all in time. Now this is supposed to be for the loft window throughout the hay bales. And it also adds a support because I did look at some pictures of barns and their structures, trying to figure out how I was going to do this, and I kind of did take some inspiration. And right here I'm gluing some of the popsicle sticks together because these are going to be for some of the framing support for the roof, and I wanted a little bit more wider surface to glue the wood to than just a little thin surface. And so it was fun actually trying to cut these angles with the hacksaw, holding the popsicle sticks on, say, boards. Well, they're kind of working like boards here. I cut them to make them look like boards. And I put two up, one on each side. Like I said, I want to make sure I kind of have a little bit thick surface to lean that against too. And I wasn't sure whether I was going to go with just an A-frame or the barn style roof, but the way this ended up working out and taking some time to figure out, I kind of got the barn style roof that we needed. And sit there and glue everything. Now, one of the things I did here, as you can see, I had cut some of the popsicle sticks in half to fit. But I wanted to make sure I was around the window framing, because I figured that would be key and notice if somebody ever notices something was out of place. Now here I'm making the framing for the door, the header and the bottom hinge, so and the door right here is definitely more than like a garage door off of one of those little Dollar Tree car sets. It was perfect size for doing it for the barn, especially for the size of these My Little Pony figures I'm using. I'm using these, it might be 2-inch or 3-inch ones, I'm not 100% sure. Now I'm putting on the rest of the roof. The first part has dried, and now finish adding in some of the popsicle stick boards, the slats. Now, like I said, it might have been around this time when I finally realized I could cut them with or shortly after this. It might have been right here when I got near the top when I was trying to get it, especially on that one board that's meant to stick out so that you can put a pulley, raise and lower stuff from the loft window, the hay loft I call it, in my second story, whatever they call it. But that's pretty much, looks great that way. And of course, now we got our inspector. He is inspecting to make sure me and my crew did a good job as Applejack awaits. Does he give us approval? Yes, he does. He likes it. He likes it. So let's move on, crew. Okay, y'all can load up and carry it on over to paint. Wait, what do you mean? Okay, fine. We'll get the bigger guys in here to let up. Move it on out. And of course, as standard, I got my cardboard up for paint, and as you know by now, if you watch some of my videos, I always like to put a coat of white paint down to help control the color. And I could probably have gotten away with not using it as a popsicle sticks because stuff. Now here you definitely I wanted to color the door whites because it's going to have to be painted. And of course, red. Got to have your red barn. And of course, the barn is red in the show, and so I did try to color as close as I can. I found a few pictures online of the barn, and I do question some of the color choices. But it's a red barn with white trim and a purple roof. The inside is multicolors. It's like a darker red. It looked like bluish gray post inside the barn in some areas, and then a brown floor for the loft area. And here I go with the purple roof. I did have to do a couple coats with some of this stuff because for some reason it's like you can not only see my paint brushes, but like some areas seem like they were not as thick as others. You can still see the underneath and some of the edging too. I had to go back over. Don't know why. Now I'm not edging around certain areas because I am going to be adding the white trim. And in the case of the white trim, I did paint them before I glued them on. I figured that'd be a whole lot easier. And on hindsight, especially right here trying to paint the insides, it would have been easier if I could have this apart in sections, and maybe if I had made each section itself and then painted it and then had a way to glue. But I don't know how much more work that would be, and I'm not that good at woodworking. I've only done a few projects here and there in the past. But yeah, I sit there, and like I said, the floor was kind of the second floor in the picture was kind of orangey, and I'll be showing the pictures as I'm talking about where I'm getting some inspiration. Now, there was some probably a few more details I thought I could have added inside that I ended up didn't, because it is kind of not cramped, but yeah, cramped as is. Oh yeah, here's where I'm adding in the white trim, and as you can see, I already had the other one at top and glued in place. Have something glued in place before doing this. That way I have a square surface to work from and butt up against. And now I did a terrible job at cutting some of these. I really but at least one of my parents said it says the actual barns sometimes weren't perfectly built either. Yeah, I put a little white trim on the inside and outside of the window to try to get it looking nice. Get everything all leveled up. One thing is I do have to do after the camera is off is I can go back and actually make sure I got everything straight, because it's kind of hard to do that with the camera. And I'm marking here so I know where to paint things, because the inside of the barn is going to be kind of like a brownish dirt floor. And of course, when I have the road, I got one of these little fairy garden things from the Dollar Tree, and I figured I would use it to help just give me a basic outline of a curve of road. And cheat here, put green right down for the grass. Now I did end up putting a little too much green on the paper at first with all those drops, where it was kind of globbed in some areas. I had thought about, actually, it was a technique I did one time in college. I just wish I could remember. It gives a grainy look to the dirt, but I'm not 100% sure what I did. It's one of those times when you experimented and you kind of wish you know what you record so you can see what you did. Yeah, the sky blue. Now, at first I wasn't too keen on making sure the blue was completely, because there's some stuff I'm going to actually do to this background first. And then I end up going back over some more blue. Now for the dirt, I just added a little bit of blue to the orange to kind of give a dark brown. You get kind of a brownish look when you add the blue to the orange here. And that was just basically be the dirt for the road and the inside of the barn. And of course, right now it don't look very appealing with this lighting at this angle. Some of you probably thinking like, oh gross, he's painting with that thing that comes out number 2. To try to keep this thing a little PG friendly. What am I saying? I'm not PG friendly. Oh, well, correction. I am PG friendly if we're going by 1980 standards of a PG movie. Some of you know about, you remember the horse drowning in the mud and Never-Ending Story and the death of Optimus Prime. Now these are skewers I'm using, and I'm actually cutting them down, and about 3 of them can fit in one of those holes. And what these are going to be is these are going to be the support for my trees. I am going to have trees on this diorama. And I did cut some more because I did want a little bit of thickness to the trees. Would glue everything together. And like I said, now making these trees was very experimental, because I actually hunted around on YouTube for making trees for dioramas, but most of those trees are for like the train set type dioramas, those like Battlefield RGP type stuff, and they're not the type of trees I was wanting. And I actually used ChatGPT to ask him whether, and gave me an idea, and one of the ideas was actually using the insulation spray foam. So right now I'm gluing these down because I want to have a tree against the back wall here. So that's why I'm gluing these ones down. And here's the spray foam. Now I did put this block of wood because, whoops, very messy. That's why you want to wear gloves. I actually, in the hindsight, I did end up it didn't look like much foam right there, but I ended up putting too much foam. It's only supposed to expand an inch, and I think it did more. Now the tree here, as you'll see in a little bit, did turn out great. And the whole purpose of the wood block and the foam there is to create a cloud that you can set upon, because from the few episodes I've watched, it's like Rainbow Dash can lay and sit on clouds. Now, these trees didn't turn out quite as well, and one thing I found out is if you probably mess with the foam too much, you're going to it kind of don't fluff out as much. And I probably want to do an experiment in the future where, as you can see, look here at how the tree on the back and how big it is, and I didn't both the cloud and the foam kind of expanded out a little bit. I did cut down on some of the foam a bit to try to get it away from the tree and give it a bit more space. That's why there's a hole there, which is okay because clouds do have holes in them. They're not actually all solid pieces. And because the foam had quite a yellow tint to it, and you can't tell in this lighting, That's one reason I'm painting it white. Now the tree, of course, green. I only have the one color green. I kind of wish I had a yellow that had mixed in to give it a little bit of brighter colors. Now the same thing with these trees here. I had trimmed the foam off, some foam down. Mixture of a box cutter and grinding wheel, because I wanted to get rid of some of the rounded surfaces, because trees do not have rounded surfaces. And the grinding wheel, I think, can also helped out to get rid of some of the sleek surface too. For my apples, I sit here and painted these little push pins, and I had to sit here and I tried a few different things to get the paint to where it wouldn't rub off, but grinding wheel, sandpaper, or directly on it didn't work. So what I end up doing here is bringing them out to the shop and put a little clear coat on them. Now I've only made 11 apples here, and I probably needed to make a few more. But the time I ended up getting sick halfway through. This is like the second time I did Diorama. I'm gonna get sick halfway through, and so I was already a month into this thing when I finally finished it, and so I just needed to get it done. Now I'm kind of using the push pin there to kind of see, because I want to see where do I want to place these trees. I don't want to be too close to the building or too close to each other. Well, it's technically, you could probably put the trees together, because like the pecan trees I got in my yard, some they're like, even though they're 50 feet apart, some of the branches still cross over in some areas. But I end up doing them a row, so it's kind of similar to how it is in my yard. I know that it looked better that way. I did end up moving the barn back a little bit, so I had to add a little bit more green on the grass there. And one thing is trying to decide which tree is which, because each tree is different in size. They're not all rounded. One's tall, one's lopsided. Hey, wait a minute, that's like real life trees. And use the push pin. Now I did have to take an X-Acto knife to widen the hole. Just cut some few little slots and just push the skewers on in. And then glue everything in place. In hindsight, I should have put the trunks on first before I glued them down. And one thing that took me a while was also trying to figure out how, other than to do the apples, was also how I'm going to actually do the trunks. And I looked at the air drying clay, which is I got here, and Walmart was too much. $5 for a big thing, I didn't need that much, and I did, because it's my first time using air drying clay. Dollar Tree had it, but they only had color, so I went with yellow, because typically in shows trunks of trees are brown, and yellow is just a step away from orange, and all brown is such a dark orange. So if the yellow feeds in the back of the paint, it will probably help lighten it up. So that's one reason I kind of went with it instead of, because I didn't have white. I didn't want to go with blue. I didn't want to go with green. Yellow was the closest. Use some of my skewer scraps. Try to make some of the, like some branches and limbs going up. Make it more like a tree. But yeah, that's the main reason I ended up going with yellow, because they didn't have white, and it's the closest thing to brown that would actually work in my favor when painting this thing. Because I did go back and I mixed orange paint with blue and a dab of white, so it won't be quite as dark as the ground dirt is. But yeah, sitting here trying to get all this thing to fit in my big hands. I did use, as you can see here, the tip of a small paintbrush I got to get in. And that's something else. I had all those holes. When you're working with spray foam, you want to use spray paint. I ended up using acrylic paint, and those holes are devil to try to get paint in, so it looks like it's greenery everywhere. And I still didn't get all the holes, and of course I did use a few apples to cover a couple of things up. Trying to get some of the root system looking right down here. And I noticed some of the trees, like that one in the middle of the base, kind of got thin, it goes from thick to thin, so here I'm having to add more to thick it out, because usually it is supposed to be thicker at the trunk base than it is as you go up the tree. Like I said, the skewers are here to add as structural support, and these are they're the bones, and I'm adding the muscle with the air drying clay. Like I said, the whole making the tree is an experiment for me. So all this stuff is working these materials this way for the first time. I probably I didn't know. I remember working with actually real clay. We used to add water to help us smooth things out. As you can see here, adding the brown, and I think the yellow is actually making the brown stick out a little bit more. You can't tell it in this camera because the poor lighting of this camera. But there you can see how it gives it. I think it helps I think it really helps my brown out better than just than just what they did on the ground there. And one thing I did kind of leave some, I didn't want to get all the imperfections out of the clay because tree trunks are not perfect. They're always kind of jaggedy and got marks in them. At least the ones around me, but then again I got pecan trees and technically their trunks are more grayish than they are brown. But we're not going for ultra realistic here. We're going for basically what everybody got in their idea of realistic. And here I am adding the apples. That's one good thing about Pushpin, because I spent a while trying to figure out, before I even get starting on this thing, what I want to do for as the apples go. And that was one of the issues I've had, was trying to figure that out. Still got some of that green grass that was left over from my Mega Man one. Well, I used a Mega Man diorama, and so I'm adding it here to help give a little bit more life to the diorama. And of course now we finally get to glue the barn into place. And ladies and gentlemen, our final result is Applejack's barn, or Applejack's apple farm, I could say. Not 100% like the actual cartoon, but like I said again, and of course you can probably tell I am not going to win any awards for paint job. But this was indeed a fun, well, it started out fun, but then got tedious, and I think part of that was after having that cold and trying to force myself to get back to working on this thing. But for the most part, it was still a fun idea, and hopefully this gives you some ideas for some stuff you want to do. Now, like I said, now it depends on what you're going to do for us, whether or not you'll be using some of the same processes I'm using. I don't have children, so I really don't have to worry about some of the safety issues. And if you're just doing it for decor of your own collection of My Little Pony or any other type of figures, feel free to use the materials. But if you got little ones, you want to be mindful, or at least mindful where you put it. Nah, you still want to be mindful, because they'll figure out some way on how to get it. I should know I was one of those ones that would climb to get stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. I hope you found this entertaining. If you like my content, please like and subscribe, and share it with anyone you think might find it interesting. Have a nice day.